So here's a question. What makes a movie a movie?
A magic picture that moves and talks. The theater screen gives pleasure and enlightenment to millions every day.
Is it the cinematography, the actors, the story, the spectacle? Or is it the medium in which those things are seen? Is a movie less of a movie if you watch it on your cell phone as opposed to the silver screen? Your answer to this question will determine, in a large part, how you view the battle currently being waged in the entertainment industry. It's a battle framed around how we classify cinema. Before the days of home video, the lines were clear. You want to watch a movie, you go to a theater. You pay for a ticket, and the financial success of the picture you saw depended entirely upon the number of those tickets sold and what we call the box office revenue. But in the 21st century, with the advent of the World Wide Web, these lines have either become blurred or altogether opaque. Recent statistics show movie theater attendance is dropping, especially among millennials, and this is due in part to several factors. For one, there are just way more movies being made these days. Around 22 films open in theaters every week. That's double the rate of release in the late 90s. And while the number of pictures being printed has increased, our free time hasn't. So moviegoers are turning to more convenient alternatives. And it doesn't get more convenient than streaming. Going to the theater can be a cumbersome affair, and sometimes you just want to watch Armageddon on a Saturday night without having to track down a copy on DVD or Blu-ray. Services like Netflix provide an easy way to watch movies without all the hassle. We all know this, that's why we use them. But you've also probably noticed over the past few years that these streaming services, which we were told would eventually let us watch any movie we want, whenever we want, and be the end of television as we know it, have basically regress to become nothing more than online versions of movie studios and TV channels. So companies like Netflix will invest $8 billion in 2018 on original programming. They wanted to be the platform of everything. Now they're a studio. You could make the argument that they have become the thing they were looking to topple, but I'm out here trying to get an original animated series picked up, so I'm not going to say it, but it's okay for me to say that other people are saying it, right? Anyway, here's the sitch. Netflix has signed some big names to its platform, and they're planning to release some big-budget original movies, including Martin Scorsese's next movie, The Irishman. It's got a $100 million budget, stars Al Pacino, Joe Pesci's come out of retirement, Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro. If this thing dropped in theaters a decade ago, it would have Oscar buzz right out the gate, and it might even run the table. But today, instead of this star-studded flick being fronted by something like Paramount or Warner Brothers, it's being produced by a web streaming company, and it's going to be released on a web streaming platform. Except it might not be? That's kind of the big question up in the air. It was announced last Wednesday that Netflix would pull its entire lineup from this year's Cannes Film Festival. This after the festival director announced he would be banning the company's films from the event's competition categories. The reason for the ban? None of the films in question had actually been distributed theatrically. Cannes' position, in a nutshell, is this is a French film festival. If you're not going to release your film in French theaters, we aren't going to screen it. Now, the message Netflix took away from the dust-up was, if your films don't release in theaters, we don't consider them real films. This squabble is quickly bringing to a head a very important discussion the industry needs to have, namely, what are real films?
What is real? How do you define real?
Does a movie lose merit if it doesn't follow the traditional release structure? Should films really be judged initially on their distribution format? Now, we know how some of the greatest cinema minds of the past decade feel about streaming technology's impact on the viewing of motion pictures. When asked about the Netflix Cannes kerfuffle during Ready Player One's press junket, Spielberg had this to say.
So they shouldn't be nominated for an Oscar.
I don't believe that films that are just given token qualifications in a couple of theaters for less than a week should qualify for the Academy Award nomination.
This overall sentiment seems to be shared by other directors, and it's been expressed in similar fashion.
It's very sad. I'm a little surprised how the public has kind of moved on. Yeah. I'm not on Netflix, so I can't even tell you exactly how that works.
If you're playing the movie on a telephone, you will never in a trillion years experience the film.
Now, what's interesting here are the perspectives. If you're a 20-something movie fan, you might look at Spielberg, Tarantino, Lynch, and others as snobbish members of the old guard. But that makes you feel weird, because, are you really going to argue with the most celebrated filmmakers of our time about the medium they've mastered? It's like arguing with Michael Jordan over the best way to shoot a fadeaway. On the other hand, if you're a film purist, then you're going to be on their side, seeing as you likely see these new innovations as nothing less than the adulteration of the art form itself, because they do away with a core element of it, the theater-going experience. So, does a movie streamed online belong at the Oscars? Well, that question has sort of been answered already. Netflix won 5 Oscar nominations earlier this year for its period drama Mudbound, while its film Icarus won the Oscar for Best Documentary. Now, you could make the argument that these don't count, because they were acquired by Netflix after they each enjoyed successful film festival runs. So let's set them aside. What about something like this? I know, but let's just pretend this thing is critically acclaimed. Use your imagination. What about an original? Should something that's never seen a theatrical release be eligible to win an Oscar? So this is the 36-page rulebook for the Academy Awards. You probably didn't even know there was such a thing, but there is, and it's full of regulations you'll probably find uninteresting. For example, on page 6, under Rule 5, Section 8, we find that in the event an Oscar-winning category was done in collaboration, each of the eligible collaborators shall receive an award unless the number of awards is specifically limited by a category's special rules. On page 7, under Rule 6, Special Rules for Acting Awards, Section 9 says under no circumstances shall an award be issued to Samuel L. Jackson, his heirs, or associated business partners despite 4 decades of outstanding excellence in his respective field. On page 3, under Rule 2, Eligibility, Section 2, subsections B, C, D, and E, we find that a film is only eligible for an award if it was, quote, publicly exhibited by means of 35mm or 70mm film or a digital cinema format, for paid admission in a commercial motion picture theater in Los Angeles County for at least 7 consecutive days, during which period screenings must occur at least 3 times daily, with at least 1 screening beginning between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. daily, and are advertised and exploited during their Los Angeles County qualifying run in a manner normal and customary to theatrical feature distribution practices, end quote. Section 3 states any film that's first public exhibition occurs through non-theatrical means, such as internet distribution, are not eligible to be nominated. So films like this thing, they ain't getting in. At least not yet. Rules can be amended, after all, and in my lifetime, this one almost certainly will. What do I think? Well, while I respect the opinion of directors who are film and theater purists, being a former film snob myself, I think it's time for this rule to change. Web streaming is now a multi-billion-dollar business. It has established itself as a legitimate medium, and it should be treated as such. Furthermore, the flooding of the theatrical market has brought the standard of film quality down to a point where the arguments about quality have become shaky at best and laughable at worst. Theatrical releases are no longer an indication of merit. And they are no longer an indication of popularity. Let's say a film is streamed by 10 million people online. Are we really going to say that it's less of a film than something only seen by 10,000 people in a limited theater run? I'm not saying popularity and audience size should be the only metric you use, but come on, this gets to have a shot at an Oscar and this doesn't? The rule of requiring theatrical releases for film awards is archaic. It doesn't reflect the current state of film consumption, and hinders progress for the industry, you could even argue the medium as a whole. This is the next step in film distribution. We're seeing it happen before our very eyes. It lets people enjoy movies. Yes, movie theaters can heighten that enjoyment on occasion, but streaming services can be enjoyable too. One thing I've learned, it's never a good idea to tell people how they're supposed to enjoy things. Just let them enjoy it. Obstructing technological innovation in an industry that's supposed to, celebrate technology only fosters frustration from a general public that's already growing frustrated with patronizing gatekeepers that seem to continually reward films almost nobody has actually seen and ignores films that have actually shaped the culture and are celebrated by moviegoers. Think about it like this. When's the last time the Best Picture category was full of films you'd actually heard of? Or, watched? Isn't that the point? I don't know, I'm spitballing, but seriously, we can at least all agree that Sam Jackson's overdue. By the way, here's a funny aside about the streaming company original programming thing. I was watching the Super Bowl this year, and a commercial came on advertising a show, and everybody sitting on the couch with me was like, "This looks awesome."
That looks really cool.
Oh! That's awful.